Hello, and welcome to another episode of Influence and Growth Mastery, where we focus on growing your influence, growing your connections, and growing your revenue. Today, I have with me Alka Sharma, who is the owner and CEO of Alka Sharma Realty Incorporated. And she is a real estate investor, podcast host, and an empowered coach helping women who face adversities. She focuses on empowerment, success, and life after divorce. Alka, it's so good to have you here with me today. I'm so thrilled to have you.
Hi, thank you. Thank you. Great to be with you.
Thank you. I was on Alka's podcast not too long ago, maybe a couple months ago, and It was such a thrill to be with you, and turning around and having you on mine is great. I wanted to start off asking you, you're an author, book author as well. I wanted to start off by asking you to share a little bit about your journey of becoming CEO of Alka Sharma Realty, and how that has shaped your approach to empowerment and how that all evolved.
Wow, that's quite a loaded question. Well, my journey pretty much has stemmed from when I look back at my journey and how everything has just progressed. And I never sort of look back as to what's happened in my life, and no matter the adversities that's happened in my life, because I think each and every one of us, we all have gone through some kind of adversities, and I find it's in the learning. So I've just learned everything where I am today is because of my journey and what has happened. And I can honestly testify that the three words that have stemmed from my past to how I live my life today is living with courage, be determined, and the willpower. The courage to keep going forward in your life, the courage to see your life unfold, and be determined, and to seek an avenues. And the avenues that has led me is in real estate. So my first business led me also into opening my studio. I was in the health and fitness space. And then now I'm in the real estate space. So you got to be determined and seeking avenues and propelling your life forward. And last but not least is the willpower, because having the willpower to succeed and seeing your life being successful and folding in front of you is the greatest that I am seeing in my life, and how you as your viewers can start to shape their lives.
Yeah, so absolutely. Talking about, you definitely have to have the courage. You have to have determination. You have to have willpower. Number one, to reach the success that you want to have in any type of business, whether it was your health and wellness, going into real estate and overcoming all of the adversities that you had. And then I know through all of that, you've had some unique challenges that you had to face, especially as a woman. Talk about, as we lead into, some of the reasons why you started your podcast and some of the things that you've been through, talk about some of those unique challenges that you faced, especially as a woman, and how you overcome some of those, and how those three words have helped you get through some of those challenges.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I was also look back as to when I first started, when I got into entrepreneurship, when I started my first business, which was in the health and fitness space. And Tonya, having no prior knowledge of the fitness industry, But I went ahead and opened my studio. And this actually came from a vision that I had to empowerment. And I'm going to lead into empowerment, which is why I'm really passionate about. But because this came into a vision and I really wanted to seek the opportunity to empower and inspire other women, because I know, earlier, in my teenage years, I was overweight. I had acne. I was bullied as a child. And I really wanted to physically change how I looked. So, when I would walk into a gym, I remember the first time I walked into the gym and I was terrified seeing all these, fit bodied people. I was so self-conscious that I just walked out. And then a part of me said, hey, Alka, didn't you want to change your life around? And this is what happened. And then I walked back in. And from that moment on, I just dug in and put in the hard work to really change my life. But fast forward to today, and the three words, the courage, determination, the willpower, always stands the forefront in everything that I do, in everything that I've stood for, in everything that I stand for today, and how I built from one career path, from the health and fitness to being a real estate investor, and also being an author. So the courage, always, there's always going to be challenges. Now, did I have the challenge when I opened my studio? Absolutely, I did. The challenge was, okay, well, how am I going to find contractors? Where do I need to go to get permits, etc.? So this was the challenge. But what ends up happening for most of us, we give up. And I did not want to do that. I said, okay, well, this is my dream. This is what I was meant. I want to open. But I had to just keep on going. And as you keep on going, even though you're going to hit roadblocks, even though the challenges I did hit, but I knew that someone was going to come my way. And then I found someone in the building where my studio was. And she helped me out. She found contractors. So, if you give up and you give up on the challenges that you are facing, you will never know to if there were other people around, because you've given up. You don't know. You don't see the other side. So this is what I want to share with everyone, is that if you give up, challenges are going to be there, but challenges are meant to come your way to see, okay, the growth that you are seeking. Are you honest? Are you willing to put in the work? Right? And this is how I saw it, that the challenges, the roadblocks is the growth for me, is the stumbling blocks for me to go over, not go under, but to go over that, yes, I have the potential. Yes, I can do it. And if you believe you can do it, you will.
I used to have, you've made me think about a poster that I had typed out and put in front of my computer back when I was in corporate. And it said, every challenge is an opportunity to prove yourself.
Yes, it is.
And I loved that, because every time I would get challenged, I would look at that and say, this is my opportunity to show myself what I can do. And
Absolutely.
So that's so big. Another thing it makes me think of too, Alka, is, and I think this is exactly what you're saying, is somebody sent me a video yesterday. I think it was a reel or it was a TikTok video, but this lady had shared with someone. It makes me think of what you said about going to the gym and wanting to get fit or wanting to be, pretty or whatever, But she said, someone said to her, you're so beautiful. And she said she never looked at herself in that light.
Right.
And she said, you can become the next Miss USA And she said she was in the Army, so she never thought that.
Right.
But this woman just kept after her and kept after her. So she tried and she failed. She tried a second time and she failed.
Mm-hmm.
She tried a third time and she failed. She did this 6 times and she failed. Well, then this woman passed away.
Oh.
And so this woman never got to see her become Miss USA. So she thought to herself, wow. But what happened was she got more determined to become Miss USA.
Wow.
So
Yes.
Yeah. So things changed.
Mm-hmm.
So on the 7th time, she became Miss USA.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So that gives me chill bumps. But,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it's all in how determined are you? So it makes me think of your 3 things. It's the determination, and it was your willpower,
Mm-hmm.
the willpower to overcome all of those challenges to get fit, to get strong, or to get the next promotion or whatever
Mm-hmm.
it is, to pass a real estate test. So I love what you're saying. So empowerment plays this huge role in the success of whatever it is that you're going to do
Mm-hmm.
from day to day. So how did all of that, if any, inspire your podcast, Ask the Expert? How did that all come into play?
Well, that all came into play because empowerment, I always, because I empowered myself through my story in my marriage and how I, broke free, like I broke from the past. Out of the darkness, I came out of the darkness into the light. And when I got into the light, when I found the light, I began to see that there was so much more that I could do. There was so much potential. But because oftentimes with every one of us, no matter what the adversities is always snubbed down, is always kind of like, it's always on the surface, right? It never sort of rises. And then after I broke free from my marriage, this is where I found the light. And as a woman of faith, and as you could also appreciate, faith, and God gives us the light to walk in. But it's up to us, Tonya, to go for that light and not to question God and not to say, no, wait a minute, I don't think I can. And that was not my option because God wanted me to go through the light. I went through the light. I saw the light. And this is how I got the strength. I felt empowered to not only progress in my life, but to also helping other women and also to know that I had a voice. Now, that voice was, of course, snubbed again in my marriage. And I knew that this voice had to be elevated. It had to be heard so that I can inspire and empower other women. And this is how the podcast came because I knew I wanted to share other people. I wanted to share my guests, their stories, because we all have a story. And my story really elevated to create a platform that we all need to share the experiences that we have gone through in our lives because we are all stronger and better together. But because we will never know if we don't have a platform. So this is how the podcast happened. And this is how empowerment truly came together as well.
Yeah. So for the audience, Alka's podcast title is Ask the Expert with Alka. And so you going through the adversities that you went through your divorce and coming out of that speaking and having the light, have come out a very powerful woman who speaks, full of love and helping other people, in my opinion, having such a transformation and giving them that voice to share, a voice and a stage to share that story. Oftentimes I think that when people go through that darkness, they seem to go into a shell.
Right.
And they don't speak about the adversities or the trauma or the things that they've been through. And I think you help bring those things out and help women find their true love, their self-confidence, their empowerment, and talk about that a little bit, because there's so much professional growth that we have as women, and we have such a skill set, and that needs to be used, rather than after going through that divorce and being in a shell, but they need to be utilized and opened up and sharing that story with others. Because I see you, and you're such a blooming flower that helps the world. Share a little bit in how that has helped you truly transform other women.
Yeah, absolutely. What I do want to share, and just what you were saying, is that no matter what the adversities that we go through, whether we've gone through, whether we may be going through those experiences, but for me anyway, I had, we all have options. And for me, absolutely, I did not want to crumble and die. I had 2 small kids at that time. And if I had crumbled and died and withered away and no one knew as to, where was I? No one cared. No one did care anyway. But if I just crumbled and died, what good was my life going to be? Because I crumbled and I died and I just went into that shell, like you mentioned. And what was the future for my kids?
Right.
I mean, as women, we have to think about, we have the responsibility. And if we have children, we got to be mindful that we are responsible for our children, not only for ourselves, as to the marriage being broken up and you are just going to die. Well, then what good is that? So, the option that I had was I didn't want to just wither away and no one knew about me, because that was not the option. And for all of us, women, there are so many challenges that unfortunately that we have to go through. We're always constantly balancing, family life, career that we have. So it is so important to know that the adversities are going to come and go. But what is equally important is how do you go above the challenges? What do you do? How do you navigate from that being in the darkness? Like I want to, have the analogy being in the darkness to going in the light and seeing the light, because this is what needs to happen. And so it is, you have to know, okay, well, how are you going to navigate through life? What do you need to do? And what you need to do, what I did was chose the path of righteousness, choosing the path that was positive, that got me out. So it's very
that
easy.
Mindset.
It's very easy, right? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
and it's very easy.
Mindset.
Yes. So it's your mindset. And it's very easy to say, okay, well, I just give up. My life is not going how I wanted. And for your audience, Tonya, that's not what I want for you, because if you just give up on life, then how are you going to progress? How would you know if
Right.
your life was going to be 100% better than how you left it?
Right. Right. Yeah, the mindset is, you and I have talked about mindset before.
Yeah,
Mindset
it's
is
powerful.
so powerful.
It
It's
is.
so powerful. Yes. And so, having those strategies, which I think you had in going through the adversities, but to show women, um, you know, the through the determination and the willpower to have those strategies through the positive mindset to help get them through those challenging times for sure.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So, how has your experience with life afterwards influenced your coaching and your empowerment strategies? Because you are coaching. Are you? Let me make sure.
I will be coaching. I will be
Okay.
starting in the new year. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and, I'm sure that you've gone through and thought through, how that experience is going to influence, your coaching and your empowerment strategies going forward. So let's talk about, in your opinion, let's think through your authoring your book. I know so many people, so many women now. I mean, I've witnessed this firsthand,
Yeah.
how women have purchased your book. I saw that at an event. Let's talk about your book a little bit and how that book can powerfully help women today. I'm going to give you an opportunity to tout that book, but how can that book help women today?
So, well, thank you, Tonya. I appreciate that. Well, the book is forwarded by Les Brown, and how the book came about was from my story, and so how the book pretty much, I've laid out the steps through, what I had gone through, the very dark time. And I lay out this step that, from, as I said, those three words, the courage, the determination, because, if you don't have the courage to lead your life, if you don't have the courage to go ahead and seeing your life unfold and your career unfold, then you're always going to be held back in the relationship that you're in. You're going to be always held back. It's like, you're almost like chained. So that's the courage is what I lay out in the book, and the determination and the willpower as to how all of this has come about in the book and why I decided to write. So I decided to write the book because it really empowered me to share my story, and by sharing my story, by becoming an author and publishing the book, was pretty much that I want to inspire women around the globe to say, it's about time that we say enough is enough. No matter what we are going through, no matter what we had gone through, enough is enough. We stand united together, and we are going to come out stronger together. So this is the premise of the book, and why I really decided to, now is the time to come out.
It is. And when we share our story, it helps other people to feel more comfortable. First of all, it helps people heal. Number one, your story ministers to other people to help them heal.
Yes.
But then number two, it also helps them say, I can relate. I can relate to this person. I can't tell you how many times an episode has gone live Alka, and I've had people reach out to me and they've said, I can relate to that person that you had on your show. I need to get that person's book, or I need to reach out to that person. I've connected with them on social because I need to get to know them more because their story resonated with me.
Mm-hmm.
And so, our stories are powerful.
Yes.
Our stories are so powerful. And so, I remember you mentioning the cocoon, being in the cocoon and coming out of the cocoon. And that part of the story really connected with me. And so I think that that's what's powerful when someone shares. Not only that, but then coming on the podcast to share a little bit more, to say, we as women, enough is enough. It's time that we use our voice. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter whether or not we've been pushed back by a male through divorce, been pushed back by a male in a job, or a female or whatever. But I think specifically in that male situation, or been through trauma or whatever, we can overcome it. We can. And
absolutely. Yes.
Yes. And so, I love the 3 words that you've chosen, to have courage, to be determined, have the willpower, and speak out for what you want, and go after it with all your will, go after it with all your might. I remember going back, goodness, it's been, I guess, going on 5 years since the first time I met you, at a 10X event.
Right. Yeah.
Thinking. I saw you and noticed you before I ever even met you. It was probably, I noticed you and knew who you were probably a year before you knew I existed. And I remember thinking, from your persona and the way you carried yourself, that woman right there is powerful. That woman right there knows what she wants. And because of the way you carried yourself and the way that you spoke up and the way that you asked questions, the places that you sat at an event. So those things matter. The way you dressed, all of those things matter. And so again, you showed up with self-confidence. You showed up with courage. You showed up as determined that you were going to be somebody. And today you are. And I love that. And I think it's important for the audience to know that it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter where you've come from, what you've been through or whatever, the challenges you've been through, the adversities you've been through. And have those 3 things. Absolutely. And you can be what you want to be. Yeah. I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that, but
I do want to add to that, and I'm just excited to add on to that. Sorry, but you know what? Thank you for acknowledging those beautiful words you said. But what I did want to add on to, and to helping your viewers, is that you talked about the cocoon. And when you feel you are in a cocoon, and when I was in that cocoon, so even before you become a butterfly, you're a caterpillar. You are, before you even crystallize and metamorphized into a beautiful butterfly, you are in that cocoon. And for me, being in that cocoon I was always sheltered my whole life. My parents always kept me sheltered. And I never learned how to grow and be independent. And this is how the book came about. And this is how then I began to slowly change my life. And then from early on in my years to then in my marriage, again, being sheltered, I was in that cocoon. So I just wanted to share with your viewers as to when you find yourself in the cocoon, better, whether it be from your, teenage years, whether you find yourself now in adulthood, you may find yourself in a cocoon, is, okay, what can you do about it? And to like what you mentioned, those beautiful words, is that you have to learn, you have to know, okay, how are you going to navigate? Where do you need to be? Where is that self-growth that you need to have? Okay, because that self-growth and you can only experience when you know that you have the self-worth. And Tonya, let me share with you, I have done a lot of inner work based from my past in my marriage to where I am today. I'm not saying it was easy. Yes, I have done it, but there was a lot of work, a lot of internal work. And what I want to share with your audience is that we never want to look at the external, that, oh, you know what? I have it all and it's easy and I'm living this life. No, as I mentioned, there were challenges. I had to go through challenges, but those challenges only said to me is, Alka, you need to step up. You need to take the quantum leap. And if I don't take the quantum leap, if I didn't do that, I would not be here sharing my story with you, Tonya. So I want your viewers to know that you got to do the work. And it's the internal work that you need to do before the external can start to show up. So this is what I just want to come on and just share with you, Tonya.
Alka, I love that. And I think it's very important because I think a lot of people, and maybe we want to dive into this a little bit, and strictly if you're open to it, because as I scroll through social media, sometimes people see what's on the outer a lot of times. And I've made comments. I did this not long ago. There was a social media influencer who made a post about, I can't remember exactly what it was, but the audience came back and said, well, you've never experienced X, but basically a downfall. And that influencer came back and said, don't judge me. You don't know where I've been. And the influencer said, I've been low. I've been way low. And I've had to, just kind of like what we're talking about. I've gone from low to doing work and doing more work and doing more work until I've gotten here.
Right.
And the audience still was really giving him a hard time. And other people were coming back and they were agreeing with this one. And then there were others coming back and saying, I was way low and I've made it, And so there was just a real mix. And I came in and I chimed in and I said, I made it to the top of corporate with no college degree. And it takes courage, it takes determination, and it takes willpower, and I can't remember the exact words I used, but, I was adding my 2 cents worth.
Right.
And I had one particular person that, tagged onto me and we went back and forth a little bit, but I actually won the person over. And the guy was like, I want to connect with you. And because I just kept saying, when I started my business, I started it with zero balance in my account. I just used my skill set and I used my knowledge and, don't go to the retirement chair because you have so much to offer. And I wasn't going to give up. I just was like, I felt something inside of me that was just like, don't give up. Keep talking to this person. This person needs it. And so anyway, we just kept going back and forth. But I think there's people out there that feel like they just can't get over the hump. And then there's people that they want to get there and they get started, and then they hit that brick wall and then they fall back down. They hit that brick wall and they fall back down. But then there's some that are like, okay, I'm going to crawl over that brick wall. Right. And then they can start running, like they're doing the obstacle course. And then they get to that other one and they're like, oh, here's another one. And they get tired. Mm-hmm. But truly, like people like you and I've been there. And if they can just be like, okay, let's look in the rearview mirror, and I got over that last brick wall, I can get over this one too. Right. And do it. Mm-hmm. They can get there. Mm-hmm. And I root for those people, because I'm like, if I did it, you can do it. If Alka did it, you can do it. If so-and-so did it, you can do it. Yeah. And so, I think what you're saying is so important, because going back to like what I visually saw about you 5 years ago, I would have never known you had adversities. I would have never known you had the ugly or whatever. I would have never known you had been sheltered. I was sheltered. Right. I was really sheltered. Mm-hmm. My mom was just sharing with me this past weekend, Tonya, your daddy never let anybody hold you for the first 2 years you were born. You weren't going to get germs. You weren't going to get dirty. You weren't going to. So that was like my first sheltering. But as I grew up, when I started driving, my dad wouldn't let me drive in the rain because I might have a wreck. It's just silly things like that. Right. But then I talk about the silly things, but then there were more major things around that, Yeah. But it starts with those little things. And so those things taint your mind.
They do. Absolutely. And you know what? When it plays with your mind, then you really start to believe in that, because you can go either way. When that tanked in your mind, what your upbringing was like. I can relate to you, because I was sheltered, and I was, even as a baby, my parents never put me down, like I said, in case you got through germs. So those stories do relate. But you know what? Sheltering. So, that can play a lot in our mind. And when that happens, we start to believe. Yes. So it can go either way. Either we start to believe, or we can say, well, you know what? That was that moment in my life. But now I have started to change, and I can change. Well, I don't really believe in that, because that was me before. But Tonya, what you said, and I just wanted to tag on to that, is that women it's courage. Yes, we need to have the courage to, either in our career, like in your industry, we need to take that courage and say, okay, my worth is, I am worthy of a pay rise. I'm worthy. Yes. Now, if you don't believe that you can have a pay rise, you're worthy of a pay rise, and you are doing the same job as your male counterpart, it comes down to your self-worth. Do you feel worthy of having a pay rise? And do you feel worthy enough to go to your boss and say, hey, you know what? I've been doing a lot of work. I'm the first one to come in, last one to leave. I feel I'm deserving of a pay rise. Do you have the courage to go to your boss and say, I deserve a pay rise? And the same goes to life. In your life, in your marriage, in any relationship that you may be in, is to being resilient. And I found that over the time, since we've got to know each other, is this sheer resiliency. I'm just resilient to really carving that life for myself. Having the courage, yes, absolutely. And right now in real estate, people ask me, well, you've made investments, you've got, I've got, investments abroad, but how do you don't you find it's risky? Well, Tonya, let me share, as a real estate investor, there's always going to be risk. Life is risky, but life teaches you, are you strong enough? Are you resilient? Do you have the resiliency to pursue again, your self-worth. Do you feel
Mm-hmm.
worthy that, yes, you can make those investments? So life really teaches us about everything. It doesn't matter what endeavor you may be in. The life and your career, they go hand in hand. It is how you see one aspect is going to translate to other areas of your life. So yeah, the courage you have to have, the resiliency as women, we need to be resilient. We need to know, okay, how are we really progressing in our lives and what we need to do to make it better.
Absolutely. And you talk about the risk of doing real estate investments.
Mm-hmm.
We risk our life every time we get in our vehicle to go somewhere.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Same type of risk. But, I think about, the self-worth and the self-confidence that we need to have in ourselves is if we don't have enough self-worth in ourselves, our neighbor that sits in the office next to us, if we don't take care of ourselves, they're sure not going to take care of us. So if we don't stand for ourselves, who is?
Absolutely.
Who is? We are going to get run over by the person who is willing to stand up for themselves. So if we are doing the work and we're not compensated the way we need to be compensated, we have to stand up for ourselves. I am so fortunate that, I never really had to bring those things up. So fortunate there, but I do know that happens. I see it. I saw it in my own place. But I was so fortunate that I had great mentors and great bosses. But, I had to take up for some of my team, but there have been times though that I did have to take up for myself. So we have to have enough self-worth and self-confidence, but there's other areas, not necessarily in compensation, but in other areas, I lacked the self-confidence and the self-worth. And it takes practice. It takes hard work to build that within ourselves. It's those constant confirmations. It's constant telling yourself that you are who you need to be.
That's right. Yeah.
I am confident. I am this. I am that. And you have to see yourself there in order to get yourself there.
Exactly.
And so, and you have to practice that. I'm sure that when, right after divorce, you didn't just automatically one day start taking care of yourself. You had to practice that until you were very outspoken one day. It just doesn't come overnight. But
nothing ever does. Nothing
ever does.
That comes overnight. You got to put in the work in your career, in your relationship. You got to put in the work. And is what you just said. After my divorce, when I talked about the internal work that I had to do, and this really helped me to see. Okay, there was so much that in my marriage, everything was put under, it was just under the surface, put under the carpet. Oh, it didn't exist. And the inner work that I had to do was to focus on my mindset. Really, I had to do a lot of mental, because I was mentally, emotionally, physically, financially broke. And when you're in that position, you are broke in all areas of your life. It is so difficult for any woman then to know, okay, how is she going to navigate through life? She's on her own. How do you even overcome that? And when I was faced in that position, financially, mentally, emotionally broke, my spirit was so down.
Wow.
My spirit was down. And yes, I cried. I'm not going to say, everything was, I was smiling. No, I was crying because now I was alone for the first time. And when you are faced in that moment, when you are alone and there's no one around to come to your aid, what do you do? How do you even overcome that? Honest to God, what do you do? And
because everywhere you turned,
right, where do you turn? Mm-hmm. And I just want to share with your viewers that for me, again, it comes down to the options. What are the options that you have in front of you? You know, as I said, do you crumble and just die and just give up? Mm-mm. Or do you say, you know what? There's going to be more. And like we just said, you need to take those small incremental steps. Start to crawl, like you said. And then you're going to sprint. Now, that sprinting, and an analogy that I want to use is to say you are overcoming the darkness. You are taking yourself out and you are seeing the light in your career. You're seeing the light in your life moving forward. So that is so important, that when you are alone, it is easy, so easy to just give up. But
it makes me think of,
I don't want you to do that.
Right. Makes you think of leadership. Makes you think of the day-to-day successes or the goals that you've set. You have to celebrate. You're talking about taking the baby steps or and then going to the sprint, celebrating the small wins that you have as you go through those trials and tribulations. But when you have a small win, celebrate it.
Celebrate it.
And then as you celebrate each win and you look back and you see that win and you celebrate it, then that helps you get to the next one.
It sure does.
And then helps you get to the next one.
Absolutely.
And then before you know it, you're celebrating several wins.
Yes.
And then you're an overcomer.
Yes.
Then you're an overcomer. Wow, that's powerful.
And that's exactly how you do it. And that's how I did it, And so even now, so always celebrate the small wins. Always. Yeah. It's in the small wins, like you get out of the relationship. That's a win in itself. Women, sometimes, most of us, we may not see that we've just come out. But celebrate that. And the more small wins that you begin to celebrate, you're going to celebrate the bigger wins. No matter what's going to come your way, you're going to celebrate the bigger wins.
Wow. So you now have this magical and imaginative trophy, because I now look at you as a very successful woman, inspirational woman. I've heard you speak. I've heard you speak on stage. And I've seen your videos of you speaking. And because for me, you have overcome. So, and I see you now with your trophy. You've had so many wins that you now have this trophy, which is beautiful.
Oh, thank you, Tonya.
It's so magical.
Oh, thank you.
When you have these conversations, I'm so visual. Alka, you probably have learned this about me.
Yes.
I'm so visual. So as we sit here and we talk about this, we talk about these wins, I'm sitting here thinking, we're running this race, or we're crawling. Now we're sprinting, and now we're running this race, and we're having all these wins. And so here we are. Here's our trophy,
Yeah.
Oh, it's beautiful. It's so beautiful.
Right. It's like, the analogy also, it's like, you just, you're at the Golden Globes. Like I said, having that analogy, you got a trophy, you got an award. It's like, like I said, I'm just picturing again myself. It's like you're at the Golden Globes. You just won an award. And that is an achievement. What an amazing achievement that is. Right.
And for the viewers here, if you can just get to a space when you have conversations with yourself, with your spouse, with your family, or with a friend like Alka and I are doing today, and maybe you've gone through this same transformation with us on this call today or this podcast.
Right.
When you can get to the point to where you can visualize your wins through your challenges like this, and you can literally go through a transformation when you can see the outcome like we just did with the handing over or the receiving of a trophy. It's so easy. It's hard work, but then it's easy to get through things. It's not as difficult sometimes to go through situations when you know there's a trophy at the end.
Yes.
And you can receive it or you can hand it over to somebody. I just love that. Visualization I'm so thankful for the boss who shared that with me many, many, many years ago. And I'm so thankful that in our last 12 months, I have learned the power of sharing your story. It's amazing.
It's amazing. Yeah. Our stories are so powerful. And, when we begin to share, that the narrative, it just, people begin to really gravitate and you want to experience the stories. Yes.
Yeah. So as we come towards the close of this podcast, I would like to ask two things. Is there any advice that you would give to women today that are struggling to find their grounding or their footing, whether it's in their personal or their professional life, whether it's going through divorce, whether it's moving towards real estate investment, life in general? Any advice that you would like to leave for women today?
Absolutely. I would say is to know your self-worth, because your self-worth defines who you are. No one can take that away. And when you know who you are, when you know you are meant for more out of your life, this is the best. You are now becoming the best version of you. You are now leading and seeing your life folding before you. So always remember, you are the person that God has made to live a life much better, not to crumble and die. So to know that you have your self-worth and believe in you, because the world will believe in you.
Wow. Very powerful. Very powerful. I 100% agree. And so for those of you listening, drop your nuggets that you've gotten out of this podcast in the comments. Leave us a review. And if you are looking to grow your influence, your connections, and your revenue, connect with us on influenceandgrowthmastery.com. And if you've not subscribed, click that subscribe button right now. And until next week, have a blessed one. Bye.